In powerful messages from heaven, Jesus tells Saint Bridget of Sweden about how a good knight is greeted and rewarded in heaven. More starkly, Jesus tells Saint Bridget of the eternal nature of his justice. This Virgo Potens production includes Book 2, chapters 11 through 12 from Prophecies and Revelations by Saint Bridget of Sweden. Christ's delightful words to the bride about the glory and honor of the good and true knight, and about how the angels come to meet him, and about how the glorious Trinity welcomes him affectionately, and takes him to a place of indescribable rest as a reward for but a little struggle. Chapter 11. I told you before about the end and punishment of that knight who was the first to desert from the knightly service he had promised me. I will now describe for you, by way of metaphors, for otherwise you are unable to understand spiritual things, the glory and honor of him who first manfully took up the true knightly service, and manfully kept it to the end. When this friend of mine came to the end of his life, and his soul left his body, 5 legions of angels were sent to greet him. Along with them, there also came a multitude of demons, in order to find out if they could lay claim on him. For they are full of malice, and never rest from malice. A bright, clear voice was then heard in heaven, saying, "My Lord and Father, is not this the man who bound himself to your will and carried it out to perfection?" The man himself then answered in his own conscience, "Indeed I am." 3 voices were then heard. The first was that of the divine nature, which said, "Did I not create you and give you a body and soul? You are my son, and you have done your Father's will. Come to me, your almighty Creator and dear Father. An eternal inheritance is owed to you, for you are a son. Your Father's inheritance is owed to you, for you have been obedient to him. So, dear son, come to me then. I will welcome you with joy and honor." The second voice was that of the human nature, which said, "Brother, come to your brother. I offered myself for you in battle, and shed my blood for you. You who obeyed my will, come to me. You who paid blood for blood, and were prepared to offer death for death, and life for life, come to me. You who imitated me in your life, enter now into my life, and into my never-ending joy. I recognize you as my true brother." The third voice was that of the Spirit, but the 3 are one God, not 3 gods, that said, "Come, my knight, you whose interior life was so attractive that I longed to dwell with you. In your exterior conduct you were so manly that you deserved my protection. Enter then into rest in return for all your physical troubles. In return for your mental suffering, enter into a consolation beyond description. In return for your charity and your manly struggles, come into me, and I will dwell in you, and you in me. Come to me then, my excellent knight, who never yearned for anything but me. Come, and you will be filled with holy pleasure." Afterward, 5 voices were heard from each of the 5 legions of angels. The first one spoke, saying, "Let us march ahead of this excellent knight, and carry his weapons ahead of him. That is, let us present to our God the faith he preserved unshaken, and defended from the enemies of justice." The second voice said, "Let us carry his shield ahead of him. That is, let us show our God that patience of his which, although it is already known to God, will be even more glorious because of our testimony. By his patience he not only bore adversities patiently, but also thanked God for those same adversities. The third voice said, "Let us march ahead of him and present his sword to God. That is, let us show him the obedience by which he remained obedient in both difficult and easy times, in accordance with his pledge." The fourth voice said, "Come and let us show our God his horse, that is, let us offer the testimony of his humility. As a horse carries the body of a man, so his humility both preceded and followed him, carrying him forth to the performance of every good work. Pride found nothing of its own in him, which is why he rode in safety." The fifth voice said, "Come and let us present his helmet to our God, that is, let us bear witness to the divine yearning he felt for God. He meditated on him in his heart at all times. He had him on his lips, in his works, and yearned for him above all things. Out of his love and veneration, he caused himself to die to the world. So, let us present these things to our God, for, in return for a little struggle, this man has deserved eternal rest and joy with his God, for whom he yearned so much and so often." Accompanied by the sounds of these voices and a wonderful choir of angels, my friend was carried to eternal rest. His soul saw it all and said to itself in exultation, "Happy am I to have been created. Happy am I to have served my God, whom I now behold. Happy am I, for I have joy and glory that will never end." In such a way did my friend come to me and receive such a reward. Although not everyone sheds his blood for the sake of my name, nevertheless, everyone will receive the same reward, provided they have the intention of giving their lives for me if the occasion presents itself, and the needs of the faith demand it. See how important a good intention is. Christ's words to the bride about the unchanging nature and eternal duration of his justice, and about how, after taking a human nature, he revealed his justice through his love in a new light, and about how he tenderly exercises mercy toward the damned, and gently teaches his knights mercy. Chapter 12. I am the true king. No one deserves to be called king except me, because all honor and power come from me. I am he who rendered judgment upon the first angel to fall through pride, greed, and envy. I am he who rendered judgment upon Adam and Cain, as well as upon the whole world, by sending it the flood due to the sins of the human race. I am the same one who allowed the people of Israel to come into captivity and miraculously led it out with miraculous signs. All justice is to be found in me. Justice always was and is in me, without beginning or end. It does not at any time grow less in me, but remains in me, true and unchangeable. Although at the present time my justice seems to be somewhat gentler, and God seems to be a more patient judge now, this represents no change in my justice, which never changes, but only shows my love the more. I now judge the world by that same justice and that same true judgment as when I permitted my people to become slaves in Egypt, and made them suffer in the desert. My love was hidden prior to my incarnation. I kept it hidden in my justice, like light obscured by a cloud. Once I had taken a human nature, although the law that had been given was changed. Justice itself was not changed, but was all the more clearly visible, and was shown in a more abundant light in love through God's Son. This happened in 3 ways. First, the law was mitigated, since it had been severe because of disobedient and hardened sinners, and it was difficult in order to tame the proud. Second, the Son of God suffered and died. Third, my judgment now appears to be farther away, and both seems to be postponed out of mercy, and to be gentler toward sinners than before. Indeed, the acts of justice concerning the first parents, or the flood, or those who died in the desert seem rigid and strict. But the same justice is still with me, and ever has been. However, mercy and love are now more apparent. Earlier, for wise reasons, love was hidden in justice and displayed with mercy, albeit in a more hidden manner, because I never carried out and never do carry out justice without mercy, or kindness without justice. Now, however, you might ask, if I show mercy in all my justice, in what way am I merciful toward the damned? I will answer you by way of a parable. It is as if a judge were seated in judgment, and his brother came along to be sentenced. The judge says to him, "You are my brother, and I am your judge, and although I sincerely love you, I cannot, nor is it right for me, to counteract justice. In your conscience, you see what it is with respect to what you deserve. It is necessary to sentence you accordingly. If it were possible to go against justice, I would willingly take your sentence upon myself. I am like that judge. This person is my brother because of my human nature. When he comes to be judged by me, his conscience informs him of his guilt, and he understands what his sentence should be. Since I am just, I reply to the soul, figuratively speaking, and tell it, "You see all that is just for you in your conscience. Tell me what you deserve." The soul answers me then, "My conscience informs me of my sentence. It is the punishment due to me, because I did not obey you." I answer, "I, your judge, took on myself all your punishment and made your danger known to you, as well as the way to escape punishment. It was simple justice that you could not enter heaven before atoning for your guilt. I took on your atonement because you were incapable of bearing it yourself. Through the prophets I showed you what would happen to me, and I did not omit a single detail of what the prophets foretold. I showed you all the love I could in order to make you turn to me. However, since you have turned away from me, you deserve to be sentenced, because you scorned mercy. However, I am still so merciful that, if it were possible for me to die again, for your sake I would again endure the same torment I once endured on the cross, rather than see you sentenced to such a sentence. Justice, however, says that it is impossible for me to die again, even if mercy tells me to want to die for your sake again, if it were possible. This is how I am merciful and loving, even toward the damned. I loved mankind from the start, even when I seemed to be angry, but nobody cared about or paid any attention to my love. Because I am just and merciful, I warn the so-called knights that they should seek my mercy, lest my justice find them. My justice is as immovable as a mountain. It burns like fire. It is as frightening as thunder, and as sudden as a bow fitted with an arrow. My warning is threefold. First, I warn them as a father does his children, in order to make them turn back to me, because I am their Father and Creator. Let them return, and I will give them the patrimony due to them by right. Let them return, because, although I have been spurned, I will still welcome them with joy, and go out to meet them with love. Second, I ask them like a brother to recall my wounds and my deeds. Let them return, and I will receive them like a brother. Third, as their Lord, I ask them to return to the Lord, to whom they pledged their faith, to whom they owe their allegiance, and to whom they have sworn themselves by oath. Wherefore, O knights, turn back to me, your Father, who brought you up with love. Think on me, your brother, who became as one of you for your sakes. Turn back to me, your kind Lord. It is highly dishonest to pledge your faith and allegiance to another Lord. You pledged me that you would defend my church and help the needy. See how you pledge allegiance to my enemy, and throw away my banner and hoist the banner of my enemy. Wherefore, O knights, come back to me in true humility, since you deserted me through pride. If anything seems hard to suffer for me, consider what I did for you. For your sakes, I went to the cross with my feet bleeding. My hands and feet were pierced for you. I spared not a single limb of mine for you. And yet you ignore all this by running away from me. Come back, and I will give you 3 kinds of help. First, fortitude, so as to be able to withstand your physical and spiritual enemies. Second, a brave generosity, so that you may fear nothing but me, and may deem it a joy to exert yourselves for my sake. Third, I shall give you wisdom to make you understand the true faith and the will of God. Therefore, come back and take your stand like men. For I, who am giving you this warning, am the same one whom the angels serve, the one who freed those forefathers of yours who were obedient, but sentenced the disobedient and humbled the proud. I was first in war, first in suffering. Follow me then, so that you will not be melted like wax by fire. Why are you breaking your promise? Why do you scorn your oath? Am I of less value or more unworthy than some worldly friend of yours, to whom once you pledged your faith, you kept it? To me, however, the giver of life and honor, the preserver of health, you do not render what you have promised. For this reason, good knights, fulfill your promise, and if you are too weak to do so in deeds, at least have the will to do so. I feel pity due to the slavery the devil has imposed on you, and so I will accept your intention as a deed. If you come back to me in love, then exert yourselves in the faith of my church, and I will come out to meet you like a kind father, together with all my army. I will give you 5 good things as a reward. First, never-ending praise will always sound in your ears. Second, the face and glory of God will always be before your eyes. Third, the praise of God will never leave your lips. Fourth, you will have everything your soul can desire, and you will desire nothing more than you have. Fifth, you will never be separated from your God, but your joy will endure without end, and you will live your life in joy without end. Such will be your reward, my knights, if you defend my faith and exert yourselves more for the sake of my honor than for your own. If you have any sense, remember that I have been patient with you, and that you have insulted me in a way you yourselves would never tolerate. However, although I can do all things by reason of my omnipotence, and although my justice cries out to be revenged upon you, still my mercy, which is in my wisdom and goodness, spares you. Therefore, ask for mercy. In my love, I grant that which a person asks me for in humility. From Prophecies and Revelations by Saint Bridget of Sweden. Book 2, Chapter 13. I am one God, together with the Father and the Holy Spirit in a trinity of persons. None of the three can be separated or divided from the others. But the Father is in both the Son and the Spirit, and the Son is in both the Father and the Spirit, and the Spirit is in both. The divinity sent its word to the Virgin Mary through the angel Gabriel. Yet the same God, both sending and being sent by himself, was with the angel, and he was in Gabriel, and he was in the Virgin prior to Gabriel. After the angel had delivered his message, the Word was made flesh in the Virgin. I, who speak with you, am that Word. The Father sent me through himself, together with the Holy Spirit, into the womb of the Virgin, although not in such a way that the angels would be left without the vision and presence of God. Rather I, the Son, who was with the Father and the Holy Spirit in the virginal womb, remained the same God in the sight of the angels in heaven, together with the Father and the Spirit, ruling and sustaining all things. However, the human nature assumed by the only Son lay in the womb of Mary. I, who am one God in my divine and human natures, do not disdain to speak with you, and thus manifest my love and strengthen the holy faith. Although my human form seems to be here before you, and to be speaking with you, nonetheless, it is truer to say that your soul and your conscience are with me and in me. Nothing in heaven or on earth is impossible or difficult for me. I am like a powerful king who comes to a city with his troops and takes up the whole place, occupying all of it. In like manner, my grace fills all of your limbs and strengthens them all. I am within you and without you. Although I may be speaking with you, I remain the same in my glory. What could possibly be difficult for me, who sustains all things with my power, and arranges all things in my wisdom, surpassing everything in excellence? I, who am the one God, together with the Father and the Holy Spirit, without beginning or end, who assumed a human nature for the sake of the salvation of humankind, the divine nature remaining intact, who suffered, rose again, and ascended into heaven. I am now truly speaking with you. I told you earlier about the knights who were once most pleasing to me, because they were bound to me by the bond of charity. They bound themselves by their oath to offer up their body for my body, their blood for my blood. This is why I gave them my consent, why I joined them to myself in a single bond and a single company. Now, however, my grievance is that these knights, who ought to be mine, have turned away from me. I am their Creator and Redeemer, as well as their Helper. I made a body with all its limbs for them. I made everything in the world for their use. I redeemed them with my blood. I bought an eternal inheritance for them with my passion. I protect them in every danger. Now, however, they have turned away from me. They hold my passion for naught. They neglect my words that should delight and nourish their soul. They despise me, preferring with all their heart and soul to offer up their body and let it be wounded in return for human praise, to shed their blood for the sake of satisfying their greed, happy to die on account of worldly, devilish, empty speech. But still, although they have turned away, my mercy and justice is upon them. I mercifully watch over them, so that they may not be handed over to the devil. In justice I bear with them patiently, and, if they would turn back again, I would welcome them joyfully and gladly run out to meet them. Tell that man who wants to put his knighthood at my service that he can please me once again through the following ceremony. Anyone who wants to be made a knight should proceed with his horse and armor to the churchyard and leave his horse there, since it was not made for human pride, but in order to be useful in life and in defense and in fighting the enemies of God. Then let him put on his cloak, placing its clasp to his forehead, similar to what a deacon does when he puts on his stole as a sign of obedience and holy patience. In like manner, he should put on his cloak and place the clasp to his forehead as a sign of both his military vows and of the obedience undertaken for the defense of Christ's cross. A banner of the secular government should be carried before him, reminding him that he should obey his worldly government in all things that are not against God. Once he has entered the churchyard, the priests should go out to meet him with the banner of the church. On it, the passion and wounds of Christ should be depicted as a sign that he is obliged to defend the church of God and comply with her prelates. When he enters the church, the banner of the temporal government should remain outside the church, while the banner of God should go before him into the church, as a sign that divine authority precedes secular authority, and that one should care more about spiritual things than temporal things. When Mass has been said up to the Agnus Dei, the presiding officer, that is, the king or someone else, should go up to the knight at the altar and say, "Do you want to be made a knight?" When the candidate answers, "I do," the other should add the words, "Promise to God and to me that you will defend the faith of the Holy Church and obey its leaders in all things pertaining to God." When the candidate answers, "I do," the other should place a sword in his hand, saying, "Behold, I place a sword in your hands, so that you may not spare even your own life for the sake of God's church, so that you may crush the enemies of God and protect the friends of God." Then he should give him the shield and say, "Behold, I give you a shield, so that you may defend yourself against the enemies of God, so that you may offer assistance to widows and orphans, so that you may add to the glory of God in every way." Then he should place his hand on the other's neck, saying, "Behold, you are now subject to obedience and to authority. Know then that you must carry out in practice what you have bound yourself to by pledges." After this, the cloak and its clasps should be lifted on him in order to remind him daily both of his vows to God and that, by his profession before the church, he has bound himself to do more than others to defend the church of God. Once these things are done and the Agnus Dei has been said, the priest celebrating the Mass should give him my body, in order that he may defend the faith of the Holy Church. I will be in him, and he in me. I will furnish him with help and strength, and I will make him burn with the fire of my love, so as to desire nothing but me, and to fear nothing but me, his God. If he should happen to be on a campaign when he undertakes this service for my glory and the defense of my faith, it will still benefit him, provided his intention is upright. I am everywhere by the virtue of my power, and all people can please me by an upright intention and a good will. I am love, and no one can come to me but a person who has love. Therefore, I do not order anyone to do this, since in that case they would be serving me out of fear. But those who want to undertake this form of knightly service can be pleasing to me. It would be fitting for them to show through humility that they want to return to the true exercise of knighthood, inasmuch as desertion from the profession of true knighthood occurs through pride. Explanation. This knight was believed to have been Sir Carl, the son of Saint Bridget. In this message from heaven, Christ reveals how he is symbolized as a goldsmith, and how the words of God are as gold. These words should be transmitted to the people with the love of God, an upright conscience, and their five senses under control. The Lord Jesus explains how the preachers of God should be diligent rather than lazy in selling the gold, that is, in transmitting the Word of God. This Virgo Potens production includes Book 2, Chapter 14, from Prophecies and Revelations by St. Bridget of Sweden. Chapter 14. I am like a skilled goldsmith who sends his servant to sell his gold throughout the land, telling him, "You must do 3 things. First of all, you must not entrust my gold to anyone except those who have calm and clear eyes. Second, do not entrust it to people who have no conscience. Third, put my gold on sale for 10 talents, weighed twice over. A person who refuses to weigh my gold twice will not get it. You must beware of 3 weapons my enemy uses against you. First of all, he wants to make you slow to put my gold on display. Second, he wishes to mix inferior metal into my gold, so that those who see and test it think my gold is just rotten clay. Third, he instructs his friends to contradict you and to claim constantly that my gold is no good. I am like that goldsmith. I forged everything in heaven and on earth, not with hammers and tools, but by my power and strength. All that is and was and will be is foreknown to me. Not the least little worm or the smallest grain can exist or continue in existence without me. Not the least little thing escapes my foreknowledge, since everything comes from me and is foreknown to me. Among all the things I have made, however, the words I have spoken with my own lips are of the greatest value, just as gold is more valuable than the other metals. This is why my servants, whom I dispatch with my gold throughout the world, must do 3 things. First of all, they are not to entrust my gold to people who do not have calm and clear eyes. You may ask, What does it mean to have clear eyesight? Well, a clear-sighted person is one who has divine wisdom along with divine charity. But how are you to know this? It is obvious. That person is clear-sighted and can be entrusted with my gold, who lives according to reason, who removes himself from worldly vanity and curiosity, who seeks nothing so much as his God. But that person is blind, who has knowledge, but does not put the divine charity he understands into practice. He seems to have his eyes on God, but he does not. For his eyes are on the world, and he has turned his back to God. Second, my gold is not to be entrusted to someone with no conscience. Who has a conscience, if not the person who manages his temporal, perishable goods with a view to eternity, who has his soul in heaven and his body on earth, who ponders daily how he is going to depart from earth and answer to God for his deeds? My gold should be entrusted to such a person. Third, he should put my gold on sale for 10 talents, weighed 2 times over. What do the scales with which the gold is weighed symbolize, if not conscience? What do the hands that weigh the gold symbolize, if not a good will and desire? What are the counterweights to be used, if not spiritual and corporal works? A person who wants to buy and keep my gold, that is, my words, should examine himself uprightly on the scales of his conscience, and consider how he is to pay for it with 10 talents carefully weighed out in accordance with my wishes. The first talent is the person's disciplined eyesight. This makes him consider the difference between corporal and spiritual vision. What use there is in physical beauty and appearance, how much excellence there is in the beauty and glory of the angels and of the heavenly powers that surpass all the stars of the sky in splendor. And what joyful delight a soul possesses in God's commandments and in his glory. This talent, I mean physical vision and spiritual vision, which is found in God's commandments and in chastity, are not to be measured on the same scale. Spiritual vision counts for more than the corporal kind and weighs more, inasmuch as a person's eyes must be open to what is beneficial for the soul and necessary for the body, but closed to foolishness and indecency. The second talent is good hearing. A person should consider the worth of indecent, silly, and derisive language. Surely, it is worth nothing more than an empty puff of air. This is why a person should hear God's praises and hymns. He should listen to the deeds and sayings of my saints. He should hear what he needs in order to foster his soul and body in virtue. This kind of hearing weighs more on the scales than the hearing of indecency. This good kind of hearing, when it is weighed on the scales against the other kind, will sink the scales all the way down, while the other, empty kind of hearing will get lifted up and weigh nothing at all. The third talent is that of the tongue. A person should weigh the excellence and usefulness of edifying and measured speech on the scales of his conscience. He should also take note of the harmfulness and uselessness of vain and idle speech. He should then put away vain speech and love the good kind. The fourth talent is taste. What is the taste of the world if not misery? Toil at the start of an enterprise, sorrow as it continues, bitterness at the end. Accordingly, a person should carefully weigh spiritual taste against the worldly kind, and the spiritual will outweigh worldly taste. The spiritual taste is never lost, never becomes wearisome, never diminishes. This kind of taste begins in the present through the restraint of lust and through a life of moderation, and lasts forever in heaven, through the enjoyment and sweet delight of God. The fifth talent is that of the sense of touch. A person should weigh how much care and misery he feels because of the body, all the worldly cares, all the many problems with his neighbor. Then he experiences misery everywhere. Let him also weigh how great the peace of soul and of a well-disciplined mind is, how much good there is in not being worried about vain and superfluous possessions. Then he will experience consolation everywhere. Whoever wants to measure it well should put the spiritual and physical senses of touch on the scales, and the result will be that the spiritual outweighs the corporal. The spiritual sense of touch begins and develops through the patient endurance of setbacks and through perseverance in the commandments of God, and it lasts forever in joy and peaceful rest. A person who gives more weight to physical rest and to worldly feelings and joy than to those of eternity is not worthy to touch my gold or to enjoy my happiness. The sixth talent is human work. A person should carefully weigh in his conscience both spiritual and material work. The former leads to heaven, the latter to the world. The former to an eternal life without suffering, the latter to tremendous pain and suffering. Whoever desires my gold should give more weight to spiritual work, which is done in my love and for my glory, than to material work, since spiritual things endure, while material things will pass away. The seventh talent is the orderly use of time. A person is given certain times to devote to spiritual things alone, other times for bodily functions, without which life is impossible. If these are used reasonably, they are counted as a spiritual use of time, and other times for physically useful activity. Since a person must render an account of his time as well as of his deeds, he should therefore give priority to the spiritual use of time before turning to material labor, and manage his time in such a way that spiritual things are given more priority than temporal things, so that no time is allowed to pass without the examination and right balance required by justice. The eighth talent is the just administration of the temporal goods given to one, meaning that a rich person, as far as his means allow, should give to the poor with divine charity. But you might ask, what should a poor person who owns nothing give? He should have the right intention and think the following thoughts. If I had anything, I would gladly give it generously. Such an intention is counted for him as a deed. If the poor man's intention is such that he would like to have temporal possessions like others, but only intends to give a small sum and mere trifles to the poor, this intention is reckoned for him as a small deed. Therefore, a rich person with possessions should practice charity. A needy person should have the intention of giving, and it will gain him merit. Whoever gives more weight to the temporal than to the spiritual, whoever gives 1 shilling and the world 100, and himself 1,000, does not use a fair measuring standard. A person who uses a measuring standard like that does not deserve to have my gold. I, the giver of all things, who can also take all things away, deserve the worthier share. Temporal goods were created for human use and necessity, not for superfluity. The ninth talent is the careful examination of times gone and past. A person should examine his deeds, what sort of deeds they were, their number, how he has corrected them, and with what merit. He should also consider whether his good works were fewer than his bad. If he should find his bad works to be more numerous than his good, then he should have a perfect purpose of amendment and be truly contrite for his misdeeds. This intention, if it be true and firm, will weigh more in God's sight than all his sins. The 10th talent is the consideration of and planning for future time. If a person has the intention of not wanting to love anything but the things of God, of not desiring anything but what he knows to be pleasing to God, of willingly and patiently embracing difficulties, even the pains of hell, were that to give God any consolation, and were it to be God's will, then this talent excels all the rest. Through this talent all dangers are easily avoided. Whoever pays these 10 talents will get my gold. However, as I said, the enemy wants to impede the people delivering my gold in 3 ways. First, he wants to make them slow and lazy. There is both a physical and a spiritual laziness. The physical kind is when the body tires of working, getting up, and so forth. Spiritual laziness is when a spiritually minded person, knowing the sweet delight and grace of my spirit, prefers to rest in that delight rather than to go out and help others to partake of it with him. Did not Peter and Paul experience the overflowingly sweet delight of my spirit? If it had been my will, they would rather have lain hidden in the lowest part of the earth with the interior delight they had than to go out into the world. However, in order that others might be made participants in their sweet delight, and in order to instruct others along with themselves, they preferred to go out for other people's sake as well as for their own greater glory, and not to remain by themselves without strengthening others with the grace given them. In like manner, my friends, although they would like to be alone and to enjoy that sweet delight they have already, should now go forth so that others might also become participants in their joy. Just as someone with abundant possessions does not use them for himself alone, but entrusts them to others, so too my words and my grace should not be kept hidden, but should be broadcast to others, so that they too may be edified. My friends can give aid to 3 kinds of people. First, to the damned. Second, to sinners. That is, to those who fall into sins and get up again. Third, to the good who stand firm. But you may ask, how can a person give aid to the damned, seeing that they are unworthy of grace, and it is impossible for them to return to grace? Let me answer you by way of a simile. It is as though there were countless holes at the bottom of a certain precipice, and anyone falling into them would necessarily sink to the depths. However, if someone were to block up one of the holes, the person falling would not sink down as deeply as if no hole had been blocked up. This is what happens to the damned. Although by reason of my justice and their own hardened malice they have to be condemned at a definite and foreknown time, still their punishment will be lighter if they are held back by others from doing certain evils, and instead urged to do something good. That is how I am merciful even toward the damned. Although mercy pleads for leniency, justice and their own wickedness countermand it. In the second place, they can give aid to those who fall down but get back up again by teaching them how to get up, by making them take care not to fall, and by instructing them how to improve and to resist their passions. In the third place, they can be of benefit to the righteous and perfect. Do not they themselves fall as well? Of course they do, but it is for their greater glory and the devil's shame. Just as a soldier lightly wounded in battle gets all the more stirred up because of his wound and becomes that much keener for battle, so too the diabolical temptation of adversity stirs up my chosen ones all the more for the spiritual struggle and for humility, and they make all the more fervent progress toward winning the crown of glory. Therefore, my words should not be kept hidden from my friends, for, having heard of my grace, they will get all the more stirred up as to devotion toward me. My enemy's second method is to use deception in order to make my gold look like clay. For this reason, when any of my words are being transcribed, the transcriber should bring 2 trusty witnesses or 1 man of proven conscience to certify that he has examined the document. Only then may it be transmitted to whomever he wants, in order not to come uncertified into the hands of enemies, who could add something false, which could lead to the words of truth being denigrated among the simple folk. My enemy's third method is to make his own friends preach resistance to my gold. My friends should then say to those who contradict them, "The gold of these words contains, as it were, only 3 teachings. They teach you to fear rightly, to love piously, to desire heaven intelligently. Test the words and see for yourselves, and if you find anything else there, contradict it."
Welcome to the Virgo Potens YouTube channel. If you enjoy this video, give it a like. I also invite you to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss new content. Please prayerfully consider supporting my work by becoming a patron of Virgo Potens on Patreon and/or by buying one of my books. My ebooks are available on Amazon as well as on the Apple Bookstore. For those who prefer a physical copy rather than an ebook, my book, Spiritual Warfare, Know Thy Enemy, is also available as a paperback on Amazon. If you are interested in making a one-time contribution, I suggest that you do so by simply buying one of my books. I am thankful for your support. Links to Patreon and to my books will be posted in the comments section of this video. The continuation of this work isn't possible without you. Lastly, and most importantly, please pray for me. May the Virgin Most Powerful guide and protect you.